Okay, guys, so I'm trying to re-record this with sound this time, so fingers crossed. I don't know what happened. That was strange. Okay, so really what you did miss in that first half of the lesson is just an introduction to what we're doing. So we're on remote learning session 10, and we're looking this week to complete that exam task, okay? We're looking to do a complete essay-style response so that we're revising procedural practice. We're taking what we know and putting it into practice. That is the emphasis for us today. Okay, so we know that we have chosen, or I've chosen for us across the exam tasks, to zoom in on section B, question 3. Now, I always choose to start here because it's worth the most marks. Can you see it's got that 40 mark allocated to it? I think for us as well, because we are learning remotely at the moment, it's got the highest value in terms of other skills that we will be revising in doing this essay. When we're analysing language, you're going to be revising the language levels and labeling that both myself and Miss Lockett have taught you. You're going to be revising the skills of how to analyse unseen texts. There's also an element of that within the Miss Lockett paper. So for me, I just thought using this task, this section B question 3 task for us, has higher value. Okay, it means we hit an awful lot of the criteria in one go, which is brilliant. Now, the section B question 3 task for 40 marks will always begin with the STEM, analyse how language is used. And as we remind ourselves of the complete question in a minute, we'll see the elements that stay the same every time versus the elements that change. Now, across this task, okay, you get 40 marks. 10 marks are for AO1, so that's your language labelling. Okay, AO3 is your ability to interpret how meaning is created through context and language. So we're looking at 15 marks for that. And this one also carries 15 marks for your ability to compare. So we know that this is a comparison task. Okay, and we've done work to prep for this. So we're going to be completing a guided written response, but we know we've already used and read and annotated 2 articles from last week from the guided reading sessions. And we're using that information. So if you've not got those articles and those notes in front of you, actually, when it comes to being independent, or when it comes to understanding some of the points I'm drawing attention to, we'll find it a little bit harder. So do make sure you have those notes. Okay, now you will complete some paragraphs together with me, but you will finish and submit a complete response with some independence, okay? So we're looking to guide ourselves or each other so far, and then Buff, over to you. So we know that this was the full task that we introduced. It's a section B question 3, and it says analyse how language is used in text A and B to present views about attitudes towards the way people speak. Okay, my lovelies? So that bit highlighted in yellow will change with every exam series. Every exam will give you 2 different texts and a slightly different focus, okay? And in your answer, you should examine any similarities and differences. So there's that 15 marks for comparison being really clearly identified, okay? And explore how effectively the texts present their views. In other words, they are looking for you to make a judgment. They are looking for you to evaluate, to consider, is one text better than the other? Is there something that both texts do well? Is there something that they fail to do effectively? So they are looking to position you, not just to analyse without opinion, but to have an opinion as to how well these texts are working. Now, I'm not going to dwell here too long, but we looked in our build-up to this last week that really, when we're talking about perspective, it's, well, what's the writer's point of view? What's their opinion? What's their feelings and thoughts? Now, what I really love about perspective, particularly being a girl who wears glasses, okay, is I always think it's like a lens. Okay, when you're looking for the writer's perspective, you're looking through a very particular lens. You're looking for how they present point of view. Now, is the point of view their point of view, or are they offering us the point of view of somebody else? Now, some articles, it's really clear. You can make an immediate distinction. Okay, yep, that is clearly the writer's opinion. That is clearly the lens of the writer. They are looking down the lens of their own opinion, their own feelings and thoughts, and that is really easy to discern. However, in some articles, they will shift. So you might have the writer's opinion, and then they might talk about somebody else who actually, they hate their opinion. They think this person's feelings and thoughts towards the attitude are really redundant or outdated. So it's always important, and we will pick that up again, those nuances of making sure we can always say that is definitely the writer's opinion, or the writer is presenting somebody else's opinion at that moment. Now, positive, negative, and ambivalent are in bright red because they're a warning. Going into an article looking for positive, negative, and ambivalent feelings and thoughts, opinions is a really good starting point. But if you end up writing a whole essay that repeats, the writer feels positive, the writer feels positive, the writer feels positive, you've gone into danger zone territory. Okay, so underneath those, we want to see that we want to build our own vocabulary for being able to unpack what it means to be positive, negative, or ambivalent in greater detail. And we also know, now this is what we were looking at actually when we were doing our annotations, we want to be linking that to lexical choices, use of similes, metaphors, etc., engaging with the authorial perspective and voice, and how the reader is being positioned. And we introduced our simple plan. And last time we were together, we have written our paragraphs, our opening to the essay, that analyse the graphological features. So today, highlighted in blue, we're going to aim to write an opening sentence section together. And then we're going to look at presentation of views and closing sentence next lesson. And then it'll be up to you to refine and finish your essay. So that was our simple plan. And we also introduce what goes into each paragraph. So that's a whole essay plan. This is a single paragraph outline. That within every paragraph, at some point, we want to identify and interpret a perspective, in brackets, a feeling, a thought, a point of view, a perspective. We want to be describing how the language is working to present the idea. We want to be then explaining the effects and representation created or evaluating those effects. And we said as we work through this acronym, we do get to the higher grade bound. If we can appreciate in context, that achieves a higher mark. So if we can say really clearly, the context is a journalistic report, that makes a difference. If we can say both writers are writing for newspapers, however, one is a journalist, the other is a professor, we're beginning to tease out the different context of their experience. And that's going to impact on how they're using language. And we're always going to be linking and comparing. I always teach comparison, that you do it as you go, that it is integrated within the essay. You don't get to the end and then do a comparison at the end. That is a safety net if you forget, but I think there is also dangerous, because if you wait until the end to compare and link, if you run out of time, if you mismanage your time and you don't hit any comparison, that 15 marks becomes very low. Okay, so we also recognize that we're using a student's response to guide our own. And last time we were together, we did our paragraphs on the opening. So we're coming in today to think about, okay, how are the writers thinking and feeling about X in the opening of these texts? Okay, now a stand first can sometimes be seen as the opening section. It can sometimes be seen under the heading of graphological features. I'm going to deal with the stand firsts because they're a clear, distinctive element of both of these articles. So comparatively, both are using stand first. It's also, for me, it's really nice for us as writers to see how stand first work, because when we write our own articles, one of the easiest ways to impress upon the examiner that we know what we're writing about, that we understand the form of journalism, is to use stand first. Okay, so these are our two stand firsts, okay? Some of us will speak with a posher voice if we think it will make the right impression. But is it worth it? Accents are more than just about how we write, how we speak, writes Chi Lu. So that's Stand First A of that first article from the BBC website. Here's our Stand First B from Text B. University lecturer Dr. Katie Edwards has faced prejudice for her regional Mexborough accent, so much so that she's conducted research into it. Here she explains why the problem's so much worse in academic circles. So we've got an immediate comparative point. Yeah, we can immediately link these two texts. Both texts use stand firsts. Okay, that's a clear point of comparison. Now, I know I've got some elements here highlighted in blue and yellow. That's the points I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. But I just want to remind you in the corner here, our acronym. Without even me highlighting, so when you're at the stage that you are working more independently, identify and interpret a perspective means look at what you're reading. Okay, what can you see that tells you how somebody is thinking or feeling or what their opinion is? Okay, so we're really looking for words or phrases that enable us to talk about what the writer or what the perspective we're being offered is in terms of how they write or think. Now, from last lesson, we know that we are looking at accents and attitudes towards accents. So that X just represents that across any text it can potentially change. For us, we are looking at X in terms of accents and attitudes towards accents. So immediately, without me having highlighted everything brightly for what I want to talk to you about, if you're just reading those, I would be encouraging to say, well, what do you think they're thinking? What are they thinking about? What are they feeling? What's their opinion? Does one have a stronger opinion than another? That's going to help us think comparatively. What's the opinion of Katie Edwards? What's the opinion of Chi Liu? Is it clear yet? Now, sometimes you will have articles and it's not clear yet. So it might be more of an ambivalent opinion. Sometimes it's really clear that they're feeling positively or negatively about something. Okay, guys? So if you were doing that for yourselves, what do you see? What can you focus on in terms of helping you understand what their perspective, their point of view is? Once you've identified that, that's where you then begin to describe the language of that moment. So in a minute, I'm going to take you through the process using my examples, but okay, what would they be thinking or feeling? How can we describe that linguistically? Well, what does it mean? What effects and representation are created? So we explain meaning and effects. Now, the evaluative bit reminds us that, are they doing it well? Is it a convincing stand first? Does it work as a good opening? Then we think about context. Now, context always comes from the beginning, really, the work we do at that level of analysis and annotation. Context means, where are these texts from? So when we looked at that first paragraph, we established context. We looked at the affordances and constraints of online platforms. We recognized one was from the BBC, one was from the Telegraph. So we've got ideas about context to help us. And the linking comparison, well, we can begin with a comparison. Both texts choose to use stand firsts, potentially. Okay, so if we're going to zoom in then, so let's look at this one, text A. Some of us will speak with a posher voice if we think it makes the right impression. But is it worth it? Now, interestingly, this opening is a complex sentence and it does introduce the topic of accents, but you can see I'm just drawing attention to the yellow, okay? It has a slightly different focus. Now here, the writer isn't yet giving their opinion. They're talking about the perspective, the opinion, the feelings of other people, of some of us. So we could talk about that use of the pronoun us there, okay, that identifies that there is a group, okay, there is a group of people, and what do? Who will speak. So we've got that modal will and the verb speak with a posher voice if we think it would make the right impression. So they're immediately identifying a point of view towards accents, that accent or speaking a particular way with a particular accent, with a posher voice can create a right impression. But they do this lovely thing. So then they follow it up with the interrogative, but is it worth it? That suggests that they themselves are questioning whether that's the right thing to do. So here we've got a writer whose opinion or perspective or position is to question the attitudes of others towards accents. Okay, so how does the focus on accents differ in stand first being? They're both using complex sentences. We've got the coordinating conjunction, the subordinating conjunction if in stand first A and stand first B. Okay, we've got the word that, which makes it complex. And she says, University lecturer Dr. Katie Edwards has faced prejudice for her regional Mexborough accent. So here there's a slightly different focus. Stand first A is questioning whether we should believe accents create a right impression. Stand first B is actually saying that somebody's experienced prejudice. So the accent and the feeling is stronger. Prejudice is a much stronger choice of word. It relates to a much stronger experience, prejudice and discrimination. So text B suggests that this person's perspective is both personal and stronger. They've experienced prejudice. So we would be talking about the complex sentence. We could be looking at the use of the abstract noun prejudice, and that gives us our analysis of those yellow feelings. Okay, also just to draw attention, because these are stand first, we could analyze and interpret perspective from that point of view. Who is Chi Liu? What's their point of view? Who's Katie Edwards? So it says here that both are using noun phrases to introduce the contributors and the writers. So you've got Chi Liu simply introduced, okay, by the verb, the present tense verb, writes. Now this reminds us that Chi Liu is a journalist who contributes to this page. Okay, so it's maybe more of a neutral introduction that we could write about. Okay, look at this one though, University lecturer Dr. Katie Edwards. So this noun phrase actually foregrounds the stand first. It comes right at the beginning. The stand first B introduces the issue first and then the writer. So this is telling us that Katie Edwards is foregrounded here because she potentially is a more important contributor. And actually what we know is that she's a university lecturer, so she's professional, she's credible. And interestingly, she's, in terms of appreciating context, not a journalist, but being maybe invited to write about her experiences for the Telegraph. So immediately, that information appreciated in context means we can make a higher grade distinction. Dr. Katie Edwards has been introduced to share her opinion. Okay, now if I've overlapped a bit with the second video, I do apologise. Hopefully now you've got some sound and I'll upload it.